All right, everyone, buckle up, because today we are diving into the Inferno. Get ready for a deep dive into the new Hellboy movie, The Crooked Man.
Oh boy.
And let's just say, based on the review we're looking at, you might be grateful you didn't see it yourself.
I've heard some things.
Our source for today's deep dive is a YouTube review from VSX Project. And they seem to have strong opinions about this one.
Yeah, comic book movies, they can be a real gamble. Just because the comic's great doesn't mean Hollywood won't mess it up, which sadly happens more often than not.
It's true. You'd think by now they'd have the formula down, right?
You'd think.
This new Hellboy, though, it promised a return to the source material, Mike Mignola's comics.
Yeah.
You know, all dark and creepy, like a horror movie with a side of red pancakes, so there was definitely potential.
Right, try to be more faithful to the source material. That's what the diehard fans always hope for. But fidelity doesn't magically equal a good movie, sadly. Plenty of flops have proven that much.
Okay, so then let's get into it. What exactly went wrong with The Crooked Man? First up, from what our reviewer says, the special effects sound like they were pulled straight from the discount bin.
Yikes.
Like, we're talking seriously questionable CGI, and apparently a lot of scenes conveniently set in dark forests at night. I wonder why.
Ah, yes. The oldest trick in the low-budget filmmaking book. When in doubt, just make it too dark to see anything clearly.
Right. Though, I mean, sometimes those budgetary restrictions can lead to some creative solutions, right? Like, a strong story can make up for a lot.
Absolutely. It's about making the most of what you have. But in this case, it sounds like the story might be another weak link.
Yeah, so the reviewer, they actually compare the movie to, get this, a bunch of haunted house walkthroughs all strung together. Like, you just jump from one scare to the next with zero plot holding it together.
Oh, no. See, that's where they miss the point of horror. It's not about cheap jump scares. It's about building tension, creating atmosphere,
Yeah.
like a slow burn,
Yeah.
You got to draw the audience in, make them feel the dread creeping up on them.
Totally. It's the difference between, like, someone jumping out and yelling boo and a genuinely creepy story that sticks with you long after it's over.
100%.
Okay.
Think of the best horror movies. They take their time, let the atmosphere simmer.
And speaking of things that stick with you, the characters in this movie, not so much, apparently.
Ah, see, that's a crucial part of any good story,
Right.
right? Especially horror. You need characters the audience actually cares about.
Right. Otherwise, who cares if they get eaten by a monster or whatever, right?
Exactly. A movie can have the best special effects in the world, but without compelling characters, it's just an empty spectacle.
It's true. And this is where things get a little, shall we say, ironic, because according to our reviewer, the character who falls the flattest is, well, Hellboy himself. They actually said, and I quote, his two main character traits seem to be smoking and shooting.
Oh, dear. That doesn't sound like the nuanced, tortured soul we know from the comics.
Not even close. So for anyone who might not be as familiar with Hellboy, can you give us the rundown on what makes him so interesting in the comics?
Oh, absolutely. See, in Mike Mignola's comics, Hellboy, he's this big, red demon dude, destined to bring about the apocalypse, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But he was raised by humans, grew up on classic literature, and, loves his pancakes.
Of course, the pancakes. Gotta love a demon with good taste.
Right, so he's got this gruff exterior, cracks sarcastic jokes. But deep down, he's constantly wrestling with his demonic side, trying to do good, even though he's basically a living weapon.
That's such a great recipe for a complex character. Like, he could destroy the world, but he chooses to fight for it instead.
Exactly. And Guillermo del Toro, when he directed those Hellboy movies back in the day, he really got that, showed Hellboy as this, grumpy but ultimately good-hearted guy just trying to figure things out.
Right. Fighting monsters, eating pancakes, dealing with bureaucratic red tape. Relatable stuff.
Exactly. It's what made those movies resonate.
Yeah.
This new one, though, sounds like they missed the mark a bit.
Yeah, stripping away all that depth definitely does a disservice to the character, that's for sure.
It undercuts the whole thing. And what makes it even more baffling is that Mike Mignola, the guy who created Hellboy, he co-wrote the screenplay for this movie.
Yeah, really. You'd think he'd be the first one to say, hey, this isn't my dude at all.
Right. It's a head-scratcher, for sure.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show adapting something is always tricky. You're trying to translate a vision, and sometimes things get lost in translation.
Especially when you're dealing with a character like Hellboy, who already has such a devoted fan base, both from the comics and the Del Toro movies.
Oh, for sure. Those expectations, they're sky high. And let's not forget, This isn't even the first attempt to reboot the Hellboy franchise on the big screen.
Oh, right. Didn't they try a few years ago with
David Harbour.
David Harbour, yes. And that one didn't exactly set the box office on fire either, did it?
Not particularly. Which makes you wonder, are they maybe pushing their luck a bit? Like, at a certain point, maybe audiences just get tired of seeing the same characters rehashed over and over.
Franchise fatigue, it's a real thing. I mean, look how many times they've rebooted Spider-Man.
Exactly. Eventually, people just move on.
Yeah.
It's like how much dessert can you eat before it's just too much?
That's a perfect analogy. So, with all this in mind, where does Hellboy even go from here?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's clear they need to try something different. Maybe instead of another reboot, they explore some spin-offs.
Ooh, spin-offs. I like where your head's at.
Like imagine a whole movie about Liz Sherman, Hellboy's pyrokinetic love interest, dealing with her powers, that internal struggle. Or even a prequel about the early days of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense.
Now, those are some fresh ideas. I'd watch those.
Right. It's about tapping into what worked while still offering something new, keeping the spirit of Hellboy alive without just repeating what's been done before.
So, what you're saying is there's hope for the big guy yet.
I think so.
Right.
But it's going to take some guts, some creativity. Maybe the Crooked Man, as rough as it sounds, maybe it's the wake-up call this franchise needed.
Let's hope so. But hey, speaking of things this movie might have actually done right, the reviewer actually kind of liked the monster designs.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, even with the questionable CGI, the creatures themselves are pretty cool. Creepy, inventive.
Well, that makes sense if you think about it. Mike Mignola's art is famous for that, right? Like,
Yeah.
really striking, kind of grotesque, but in a cool way.
Right, like the monster under your bed, but, it's wearing a really stylish hat or something.
Exactly. And it reminds us, even though the special effects might have missed the mark, there's still something to be said for good visual storytelling.
It's like you can screw up the cooking, but if you use a good recipe, you can at least see the potential.
Perfect analogy.
Mm.
And I think that's a good note to end on, actually.
Yeah.
We've talked about the good, the bad, the downright baffling when it comes to this Hellboy movie. But at the end of the day, it all goes back to the source material.
Right. No matter how many times Hollywood tries to adapt Hellboy, those early comics, they still hold up.
They really do. It's a testament to Mike Mignola's vision, the world he built. So, yeah, maybe The Crooked Man wasn't the Hellboy movie we were waiting for.
But there's always hope for next time.
Exactly. And hey, in the meantime, we can always revisit those classic comics, right? Get back to the source of it all.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that about wraps things up for this deep dive into the Hellboy universe, or at least one very strange corner of it. Until next time, everyone.
See that?